My name is Sarah Miller, and the most humiliating moment of my life happened less than 12 hours after I came home from Afghanistan. I had imagined my return many times over the years. In some versions, my father was still alive, waiting with that awkward half-smile he used whenever emotions made him uncomfortable. In others, I arrived, quietly hugged him once, and we moved on like nothing dramatic had happened. My father wasn't a sentimental man, neither was I. Reality, as it turned out, was colder. The Greyhound bus hissed as it pulled away, leaving me alone under a flickering streetlight somewhere in suburban Pennsylvania. Rain hammered the pavement with a violence that blurred everything beyond a few yards. My duffel bag dug into my shoulder. The strap of my old military backpack, frayed, faded, stubbornly reliable, pressed against my collarbone. 10 years. 10 years of deployments, sand, dust, heat, noise. 10 years of learning how to function in places where nothing was stable except discipline. And now I was back standing in the kind of storm civilians usually watched through windows with a glass of wine. I checked my phone. No new messages. Not from Tiffany. Not from anyone. The rideshare app showed no drivers available. Of course. I started walking. The mansion wasn't far. I knew the road by memory, even though the neighborhood had grown wealthier, brighter, more polished. New landscaping, new gates, new cars sleeping under neat carports like obedient animals. By the time I reached the curved driveway, my jacket was soaked through. Light spilled from the windows of the house in warm, golden rectangles. Music drifted through the rain, low, expensive, curated. Laughter, glassware, voices raised just enough to signal status but not enough to appear crude. A party. I stood there for a second longer than necessary. Then I walked to the door and rang the bell. Footsteps. The door opened. Tiffany stared at me. For half a heartbeat, her expression fractured. Surprise, recognition, something almost human. Then the mask slid into place. Oh my God. Not relief. Not warmth. Just annoyance wrapped in disbelief. Behind her, the living room glowed like a magazine spread. Soft lighting, designer furniture, guests dressed in tailored silhouettes and effortless wealth. Someone held a champagne flute. Someone else leaned against the marble counter, laughing too loudly at something forgettable. I swallowed the taste of rain. Hi, Tiff. She looked me up and down slowly. Wet jacket, travel-worn boots, backpack, duffel. A ghost from a different life. You didn't tell me you were coming tonight. I didn't know I needed an appointment. Her jaw tightened. You look, she gestured vaguely, exactly like someone who just got off a bus. I did. A couple near the fireplace turned toward us. Tiffany shifted her body slightly, blocking their view like a reflex. This is really not a good time. I just got back. I came straight from Dulles. And I need somewhere to stay. Silence. Thunder cracked overhead, rattling the glass. Tiffany exhaled sharply through her nose, then stepped outside, pulling the door halfway closed behind her. Rain lashed the porch. You have incredible timing. I didn't know you were hosting. It's not hosting, Sarah. It's networking. Right. She folded her arms. You could have gone to a hotel. I don't have hotel money. She blinked. You're serious? I just got discharged. I haven't even seen the paperwork yet. Her lips curled, not quite a smile. So after 10 years of serving your country, you're broke. I wouldn't say it like that. But it's true. Another rumble of thunder. I just need a couch for a few nights. Tiffany laughed softly. Not amused. Sharp. You show up out of nowhere, dripping rainwater all over my porch during one of the most important evenings I've had this year. Tiff. And you ask for a couch. I'm your sister. And I'm not running a shelter. The words landed without drama. Flat, clean, surgical. I stared at her. She leaned closer, lowering her voice. You don't get to just walk back into my life whenever it's convenient for you. I didn't leave for convenience. You left, period. I enlisted. Same difference. Lightning flashed across the lake behind the house, turning the water into a sheet of silver violence. I came home when Dad died. You came late. I was deployed. You're always deployed. That hurt more than it should have. I missed the funeral because I was trying not to get killed. And I was planning everything alone. She straightened. Do you have any idea how hard it's been carrying this family while you were off playing soldier? I wasn't playing. Whatever helps you sleep at night. Music swelled faintly inside. Someone called Tiffany's name. She glanced back, irritation flickering. I can't do this right now. I just need a place to sleep. Her eyes hardened. You want to know what I see when I look at you? I didn't answer. A cautionary tale. Tiffany. A woman who wasted a decade chasing medals nobody cares about. I didn't chase medals. You chased meaning in a desert. Another flash of lightning. Rain streamed off the roof. And now you're standing here, she said quietly with nothing. I felt my grip tighten on the duffel. She looked at it. Then at me. Then she said it. Loser. The word was almost gentle. Almost bored. But it sliced deeper than any shouted insult. Before I could react, she grabbed my duffel from my shoulder. Tiff. She hurled it off the porch. It hit the soaked lawn with a dull, ugly thud. Gasps from inside. The door swung wider. Now everyone could see. The wet soldier's sister. The elegant younger sister. The spectacle. I'm not doing this in front of my guests, Tiffany snapped. I'm not doing anything. You're embarrassing me. I just asked for help. And I just answered. She reached into a folder sitting on the entry table, pulled out a document and shoved it toward me. Here, since you clearly haven't checked your mail. Rain blurred the ink. I wiped the page with my sleeve. Last will and testament of Daniel Miller. My father. My stomach dropped. This is the official summary, Tiffany said. Filed, executed, done. I scanned. Property 1 Lakeside Residence to Tiffany Miller. Property 2 Miller's Fuel Service Station to Sarah Miller. That's exactly what it is. He wouldn't. He did. I need to talk to the attorney. You can call him tomorrow. I should have been there when Dad made decisions, she tilted her head. Funny how that works. I looked up. Tiff. She stepped back inside. Then she said loudly enough for everyone. I'm sorry, but you can't stay here. And then she closed the door. Locked it. I stood there in the storm, staring at my own reflection in the polished wood. Behind the glass, conversations resumed. Quieter now. Curious. Detached. I picked up my backpack. Walked down the driveway. Didn't look back. Because soldiers learn something early. Dignity is sometimes just the decision to keep moving. I reached Miller's Fuel just after midnight. The sign was rusted, the lights long dead. Rain dripped through a crack in the awning. Inside, the air smelled like cold metal, old oil, and abandonment. My inheritance. My father's final message. I set down my bag. Stood in the dark. Listening to the storm. Not yet knowing that beneath my feet, everything was about to change. The storm didn't ease. It settled in. Wind pressed against the old structure like something alive, rattling loose metal, whistling through seams that hadn't been maintained in years. Miller's Fuel looked worse from the inside than it had from the road. Water stains streaked the ceiling. The tile behind the counter had cracked into spiderweb patterns. Dust clung to every flat surface thick enough to record the history of neglect. I locked the door out of habit. Not fear. Just training. My flashlight beam slid across shelves stocked with relics, expired motor oil bottles, yellowed maps, a faded rack of windshield wipers no modern car would accept. The register sat open empty like a mouth mid-sentence. I dropped my backpack beside the counter. For a moment, exhaustion hit me all at once. The kind that arrives after adrenaline fades. I leaned against the wall and closed my eyes. Afghanistan had taught me how to sleep anywhere. It had not taught me how to come home. The office in the back was barely intact. A metal desk, filing cabinet, a chair missing one wheel. The window pane had a crack running diagonally through it, sealed long ago with discolored tape. I shrugged off my soaked jacket and wrung water from the sleeves. No power. No heat. But the air back here was still. I opened my backpack and took inventory. Everything I owned now fit inside 2 bags. Clothes, documents, a few personal items I'd carried across continents because throwing them away felt like erasing proof I'd existed before the military. I found a dry sweatshirt. Changed quickly. My movements were automatic, efficient, almost detached. Because if I allowed myself to think about Tiffany, about my father, about the word loser, I wasn't sure what would surface. The storage room was larger than I expected. Concrete floor, rusted shelving, stacked crates, dust-coated drums labeled decades ago in handwriting that no longer belonged to anyone living. The smell was heavy oil, rubber, old chemicals, stale air, sealed too long. I shifted one crate. Then another, looking for anything useful. Blankets, tarps, something soft enough to lie on. That's when I noticed the floor. A rectangular section near the far wall looked wrong. Not obvious, but different. Cleaner along the edges. The dust had been disturbed once long ago, then settled again. I crouched, ran my fingers along the seam. Wood. Not concrete. A hatch. My pulse sharpened. I sat back on my heels, stared at it. Because nothing about this place suggested hidden compartments or dramatic revelations. This wasn't a spy movie. It was a bankrupt gas station in rural Pennsylvania, abandoned by progress and memory alike. Still, my father had been a meticulous man. Quiet. Observant. He repaired things nobody else even noticed were broken. Slowly, I dragged the oil drums aside. They were lighter than they looked. Empty. The hatch had a recessed handle nearly invisible under grime. I wiped it clean with my sleeve. Hesitated. Then pulled. The hinges groaned softly. Not loud, but enough to echo in the hollow dark. A rush of cooler, drier air rose from below. My flashlight beam cut into the opening. Stairs. Narrow. Leading down. My breath stalled for half a second. Training again. Scan. Listen. Smell. No immediate danger. No gas leak. No movement. I descended slowly. The basement wasn't a basement. It was a vault of intention. Dry, sealed, preserved. Metal shelves lined the walls, organized with a precision that made my throat tighten instantly. Boxes labeled by year. Binders. Equipment cases. A small dehumidifier unit sat silent in the corner, long dead, but evidence that someone had once cared deeply about maintaining this space. My father. There was no doubt. I stepped fully inside, closed the hatch above me. And for the first time since returning, I felt something close to shock. The shelves held decades of paper, tax records, property documents, maintenance logs, receipts, insurance files, but not just for Miller's fuel. For everything. The lakeside house. Vehicles. Accounts. And deeper still. Technical manuals. Engineering diagrams. Communications schematics. I opened one binder. My father's handwriting stared back at me. Neat, controlled, unemotional. Project Notes Telecommunications Systems. Another binder. Contract Work Federal Communications Infrastructure. I blinked. My father had never spoken much about his career. Consulting. Technical work? Nothing interesting. That's what he always said. But these weren't casual freelance gigs. These were long-term contracts tied to government communications upgrades dated back to the late Cold War years. Not espionage. Not cloak and dagger fantasy. Something more believable. More American. A civilian contractor with clearance. A man trusted with systems, not secrets. At the center shelf sat a fireproof lockbox. Different from the rest. Deliberate. My name was written across the top. Sarah. My chest tightened painfully. I opened it with shaking fingers. Inside, a sealed envelope. A leather-bound journal. A set of certified copies of legal documents. And a folder marked, Trust Instructions. I stared at the envelope. My father's handwriting again. I opened it. Sarah. If you're reading this, then you did exactly what I believed you would do. You came back to the place everyone else would walk away from. I swallowed hard. I owe you honesty I did not give you while I was alive. Not because I didn't trust you, but because timing matters. My eyes blurred. Not from tears. From fatigue colliding with emotion I hadn't prepared for. The gas station was never a punishment. It was a test of character I believed only one of my daughters could pass. I stopped breathing for a moment. Value is rarely where people point first. I lowered the letter slowly. Opened the folder. The trust documents were legitimate. Not fantasy wealth. Not absurd millions. But substantial. Enough to change a life. Conditional. Carefully structured. Funds designated for legal protection of estate assets, restoration or sale of Miller's fuel, personal stabilization during transition, community or veteran-related initiatives. My father hadn't hidden money. He had hidden leverage. Beneath the documents lay another file. Handwritten tab. Personal notes, Tiffany. My pulse thudded. I opened it. Not accusations. Not bitterness. Observations. Dates. Incidents. Mentions of pressure. Isolation. Changes in behavior during my father's final illness. A final entry. I am not certain Tiffany understands the difference between winning and taking. I closed the file slowly. Mind racing now. Pieces aligning. Not revenge. Not yet. But clarity. Upstairs the storm still raged. But down here, for the first time since my return, I understood something vital. My father hadn't left me ruins. He had left me a position. And Tiffany, whether she knew it or not, was standing on ground far less stable than she believed. I didn't confront Tiffany the next morning. Or the next week. Revenge born from humiliation is loud, impulsive, sloppy. I'd seen enough of that in my life on battlefields, in barracks, in broken families. Emotion makes people reckless. Recklessness leaves evidence. My father hadn't raised me to be reckless. The storm passed sometime before dawn. By morning, Pennsylvania looked deceptively peaceful. Wet asphalt shimmered under pale winter light. The air was sharp, clean, indifferent to what had happened the night before. Inside Miller's Fuel, nothing had changed. Except me. I sat at the metal desk in the office trust documents spread neatly in front of me. Coffee from a nearby diner steamed in a paper cup that read, "Refill 99 cents" in cheerful red letters. Across from me sat Daniel Harper, probate attorney. Mid-50s, conservative suit, voice trained to stay neutral even when absorbing information capable of detonating a family. He flipped through the certified copies I had pulled from the vault. His brow furrowed slightly, then deeper. These were not included in the estate packet. I noticed. He removed his glasses, rubbed the bridge of his nose. "Where exactly did you say you found these?" "In a sealed storage area beneath the service station." A pause. "Did anyone else have access?" "Not recently." He studied me for a long second. "You understand what this implies?" "Yes." "And you waited to bring this forward." I wanted to understand it first. Something like reluctant respect flickered across his face. 2 days later, Harper connected me with a forensic accountant. Margaret Klein. Precise, efficient, the type of professional who spoke in clean numbers instead of emotional speculation. She requested full financial disclosures tied to the lakeside property, outstanding debts, lines of credit, business accounts linked to Tiffany. What returned painted a picture I hadn't expected, but one my father clearly had. Tiffany wasn't wealthy. She was floating. Mortgage near maximum valuation. Refinancing twice. Credit lines extended aggressively. Business revenue, inconsistent, strong visibility, weak liquidity. Luxury lifestyle maintained through leverage, not ownership. Margaret tapped a highlighted section. She's solvent only if nothing destabilizes her image or income streams. And if something does, she collapses quickly. No drama. Just math. I drove past the mansion once that week. Fresh landscaping. A new imported SUV in the driveway. Delivery trucks. Caterers. Nothing about the exterior suggested financial fragility. That was the trick. Appearance is the most expensive addiction in America. Back at Miller's Fuel, I started working. Not symbolically. Literally. Broken door hinges. Cracked shelving. Inventory disposal. I hired a local electrician to restore partial power. Paid in cash from trust funds, properly documented, properly allocated. Word traveled fast through the small town. The Miller girl was back. The soldier. Living at the gas station. Fixing it. Most people didn't ask questions. Pennsylvania towns have a particular etiquette curiosity without intrusion. Tiffany did not share that restraint. She arrived unannounced one afternoon. Designer sunglasses, perfect hair, the faint scent of expensive perfume cutting harshly through the smell of fuel and metal. She stepped out of her SUV, looked at the building, then at me. Standing there in grease-stained jeans, wrench in hand. Her smile was slow and lethal. "Well, this is tragic." I didn't answer. She walked closer, heels clicking against concrete. "I mean, I assumed you'd leave by now. I'm busy." "With what, rebuilding the 20th century?" I tightened a bolt silently. She circled me like a bored predator. "You're actually doing this?" Yes. Living here? For now. She laughed softly. Oh my God, Sarah. I straightened slowly. Met her eyes. She tilted her head. You really think Dad wanted this for you? I think Dad was very deliberate. Her jaw flickered. Then she smirked again. Whatever helps you cope. She gestured around us. This place is a fossil. Maybe. You could have asked me for money. I did ask you for something. Her expression hardened instantly. Don't. You called me a loser. If the shoe fits. Silence. Wind rattled the loose edge of the sign above us. You know what your problem is, Tiffany said. I waited. You mistake endurance for success. And you mistake visibility for stability. Her smile vanished. Just for a second. Then returned sharper. Still bitter. Good, that's at least human. She turned toward her car. Oh, and Sarah? I looked up. If you ever decide you can't handle this little survival experiment. She removed her sunglasses. Don't expect sympathy. She drove away. Convinced of her victory, I filed the legal motions the following Monday. Quietly, Harper handled the submissions. Probate dispute. Request for judicial review of withheld estate documents. Preservation of financial and communication records. Simultaneously, through a trust-approved structure, we acquired control over a secondary lien note tied to the lakeside property. Not the entire debt. Just enough. Enough to apply pressure. Legally. Precisely. Foreclosure wasn't immediate. That's another myth fiction loves. Reality is procedural. Notices. Deadlines. Compliance windows. But pressure has a psychological effect long before consequences materialize. Tiffany began calling Harper within weeks. Then Klein's office. Then banks. Then anyone who might explain why certain options she had previously relied upon were no longer flexible. She came back to Miller's Fuel again. Less polished this time. Eyes tired. Voice edged with something new. What did you do? I looked up from the counter I was refinishing. Good to see you too. This isn't funny. I'm not laughing. My bank called. I imagine they did. She stared at me. You're behind this. I'm behind paperwork. You don't even understand half of what you're messing with. I understand enough. Her breathing quickened. You've always been jealous. Of what? My life. I held her gaze. Your life is financed, Tiffany. She flinched. Then fury ignited. You think you're smarter because you found some dusty files? I think Dad kept very good records. You're trying to destroy me. I'm correcting a narrative. She leaned closer, voice trembling now. You don't get to do this. I didn't start this. You're punishing me because you couldn't handle losing. I spoke calmly. I didn't lose. She stared at me. For the first time. Uncertain. By the time the court date was set, the illusion had already cracked. The invitation arrived on thick cream cardstock. Embossed lettering. Minimalist elegance. The kind of design that signals taste without effort. Harper Lakeside Foundation Annual Winter Charity Auction. Hosted at the Miller Residence. Tiffany's name appeared beneath it, honoring Tiffany Miller, entrepreneur and digital brand strategist. I held the card for a long time. Not because it surprised me. Because it didn't. Tiffany had always understood one thing instinctively. Visibility is survival. Even now, under financial pressure, legal scrutiny, tightening deadlines, she was performing success. Especially now. By the evening of the auction, the mansion glowed like a staged dream. Valet attendants moved with rehearsed politeness. Luxury sedans lined the curved drive. Soft jazz drifted through heated air, spilling from the entrance each time the door opened. I stepped out of the car. Tailored black suit. Simple. Precise. No theatrics. But I could feel the shift immediately. Eyes lingered. Not recognition. Assessment. Because presence is a language. And mine no longer translated as discarded sister from the storm. Inside, the atmosphere shimmered with curated generosity. Crystal glassware. Low golden lighting. Tables displaying auction items. Weekend retreats, art pieces, private dining experiences. At the center of it all, Tiffany. Radiant. Controlled. Wearing confidence like armor. She stood near the grand staircase, laughing lightly with a cluster of donors and local personalities, every gesture polished, every smile calibrated. For a brief second, I saw the version of her that once braided my hair before school. Then she noticed me. Her expression froze. Just slightly. Then recalibrated. A slow smile. Tight. She excused herself from the group and walked toward me, heels silent against marble. "Well," she said softly, "this is unexpected." "Good evening, Tiffany." She scanned my suit, my posture, my calm. Something flickered behind her eyes. "You clean up nicely." "I try." "You're here to, what, observe?" "I'm here because I was invited." Her jaw tightened. "I didn't invite you. The foundation did." A beat. She leaned closer. "You really chose tonight." "I didn't choose the timing." "You always do." I held her gaze. She searched my face, looking for anger, bitterness, something messy, finding none. That unsettled her more than hostility ever had. The program began shortly after. A local board member took the stage, voice warm with practiced sincerity. Gratitude. Community. Philanthropy. Then, Tiffany's introduction. Applause rippled through the room. She ascended the small platform gracefully. Poised. Unshaken. Success, Tiffany began, is never a solo journey. I watched from the back. Still. Silent. Waiting. Because revenge, if done properly, is not interruption. It is inevitability. Daniel Harper stepped forward before she finished. Not abruptly. Not rudely. But with the quiet authority of legal procedure. A subtle murmur moved through the audience. Tiffany turned, irritation flashing. "Daniel." His voice was even. "I'm afraid we need to pause the program briefly." A hush spread. Confusion. Tension. Tiffany forced a smile. "Is this really necessary right now?" "Yes." Her eyes hardened. "This is a charity event. And this is a legal matter concerning estate assets and financial instruments tied directly to this property." The room shifted. Interest sharpened instantly. 2 individuals entered behind Harper. A bank representative. And a court officer. No drama. No shouting. Just documentation. Harper addressed the audience calmly. "There are pending probate proceedings involving withheld estate records and financial disclosures." Tiffany's face drained slowly of color. "This is insane," she whispered. He continued. "Additionally, foreclosure actions have been activated due to unresolved lien obligations and material misrepresentations under review." A ripple of shock moved through the crowd. Tiffany stepped down from the platform, voice rising. "You cannot do this here." "I'm not doing anything, Tiffany. I'm enforcing procedure." She looked at me. Finally. Fully. Realization striking like physical force. "You?" I didn't move. The bank representative spoke next. "Professional. Detached. Effective immediately, transfer or liquidation of assets is restricted pending court determination." Gasps. Whispers. Phones subtly raised. Because scandal travels faster than empathy. Tiffany's composure shattered. "This is harassment." "No," Harper replied quietly. "This is consequence." She spun toward the guests. "There's been a mistake." But people were already stepping back. Distance forming instinctively. Social oxygen evaporating. Donors murmuring to one another. Board members stiff with discomfort. She turned to me, eyes wild now. "You did this to me." "I didn't do this." "You're destroying my life." "I'm exposing a structure that was already collapsing." Tears pooled but didn't fall. "You hate me." "I hate what you did." Her voice cracked. "I did nothing wrong." I held her gaze. "You locked your sister out in a storm the night she came home from war." Silence. Heavy. Absolute. "You manipulated a dying man's final days." Her breath hitched violently. "I took care of him." "You isolated him." "I protected him." "You controlled access." "I was there." "Yes," I said quietly, "you were." The guests began leaving. Quickly now. Polite exits dissolving into urgent retreats. Because reputation is contagious. And nobody wealthy risks infection. Tiffany's knees buckled. Not theatrical. Not staged. Just gravity claiming someone whose reality had shifted too violently to stand. She clutched the edge of a table. Voice breaking. Sarah, please. I stepped closer, looked down at her. Not triumphant, not cruel, but unflinching. Power, I said calmly, was never in this house. She sobbed openly now. It was in who you were without it. And for the first time in my life, Tiffany had no audience left to impress. People assume revenge ends at the moment of collapse. It doesn't. Collapse is loud, public, spectacular. What comes after is quieter, and far more revealing. 3 months after the charity auction, winter had settled over Pennsylvania with a steady, colorless patience. Snow edged the roadside in uneven banks. Bare trees stood like witnesses, stripped of opinion. Miller's Fuel no longer looked abandoned. Not impressive, not glamorous, but alive. The neon sign had been repaired, not replaced, just restored. The pumps worked, the windows were clean. Inside the shelves held practical things again: coffee snacks, windshield fluid, motor oil that hadn't expired a decade earlier. The place smelled different now. Less rust. More purpose. Tiffany arrived just after opening. No SUV. No designer coat. Just a borrowed sedan and a hesitation I could see even before she stepped out. She stood beside the car for a long time, studying the building, as if approaching a version of reality she still hadn't fully accepted. I was behind the counter, balancing the morning receipts. She entered slowly. The bell above the door chimed. A small sound, but it changed the air instantly. She looked thinner, not fragile, but reduced, like someone who had been living on adrenaline and applause now forced into the unfamiliar territory of silence. "Hi," she said. Her voice was careful, uncertain. I nodded once. "Tiffany." She swallowed, eyes moving around the store. "You really fixed it." "I repaired what worked." A pause. "It looks good. It functions." Silence stretched between us. Not hostile. Not warm. Just honest. "I didn't know where else to go," she said quietly. I continued writing. I assumed. They all disappeared. People attached to image usually do. Her jaw tightened faintly, then relaxed. I lost everything. I met her eyes. "You lost leverage, not existence." Tears threatened again, but she fought them down. "I don't have anywhere to live." "You have options." "No," she whispered, "I don't." That wasn't entirely true. But humiliation reshapes perception. And for the first time, Tiffany was seeing life without filters, edits, lighting adjustments. "The settlement terms still stand," I said calmly. She nodded faintly. "Work placement, debt restructuring, supervised income recovery. Conditions my attorney had insisted be written clearly, legally, without emotional ambiguity. Not mercy. Structure." "You're serious about making me work here?" "Yes." "I don't know anything about this." "You'll learn." "I built a brand, Sarah." "You built visibility." "I built a business." "You built dependency on perception." Her shoulders slumped. "I can't believe you're doing this." "I can." She stared at the floor, voice barely audible. "I'm sorry." The words were raw, unpolished, late, but real. For the storm, for everything. I held her gaze. "An apology doesn't erase consequences." "I know." "It doesn't restore trust." "I know." "It doesn't change what you did to Dad." She flinched. "I know." Another silence. Different this time. Less tension. More gravity. "But it can begin something else," I said. Her eyes lifted slowly. "Hope." "Fear." "Confusion." "Accountability," I finished. Tiffany started that day. No ceremonial speeches. No dramatic reconciliation. Just a shift schedule taped behind the counter. Morning inventory. Cleaning. Register training. Customer service. The first week was brutal for her. Not because the work was impossible. Because it was ordinary. Uncelebrated. Unseen. Standing 8 hours. Smiling at strangers who didn't know or care who she used to be online. Learning the difference between followers and customers. Between engagement and trust. She complained less than I expected. Collapsed once in the back room exhausted. Cried quietly where she thought I couldn't hear. I did hear. I didn't comment. Because some lessons only take root in silence. By spring, Miller's Fuel had become something unexpected. A small but steady stop along the county road. Truckers, locals, travelers, veterans. They lingered sometimes. Talked. Not about tragedy. About life. Work. Bills. Children. Regret. Second chances. I established the Miller Transition Fund using a portion of the trust assets my father had structured so carefully. Housing assistance for returning veterans. Job retraining support. Legal guidance referrals. Nothing grandiose. Just practical stability. Tiffany helped with the paperwork occasionally. Quiet. Focused. Different. Less performance. More presence. One evening we sat outside the station after closing. The sky stretched clear and deep above us, stars scattered across it with an indifference I found strangely comforting. Tiffany broke the silence first. I used to think winning meant being envied. I didn't answer. She continued. I didn't realize how empty that was. Wind moved softly through the grass. I didn't destroy you, I said finally. She shook her head. No. A pause. I did. We sat there in the quiet. Not fully healed. Not magically restored. But no longer enemies. My father had left me a gas station. Yes. But more than that. He had left me a choice. Become bitter. Or become deliberate. Revenge, I learned, is most powerful when it does not consume the one who carries it. Justice is colder. Cleaner. And strangely, more merciful. If this story moved you, unsettled you, or reminded you of something unresolved in your own life, take a moment. Reflect. Share. And if you'd like to hear more stories about resilience, truth, and the quiet forms of strength we rarely talk about, subscribe. Because sometimes the most important battles happen after the storm ends.